So I've got, Tashish, we've got a few minutes left. So I want to quickly then chat to you about what is the schoolboy rugby program? How do we combine high performance culture into this program?
Sorry, Hein, Annie.
Ja.
Jy net vinnig op daai tyd. Ja,
Yes.
so I also I get very frustrated with 2-hour sessions. I know for myself, I tend to run on 90 minutes. But I think obviously there's a bit of space to improve on that. But yeah, I do think teaching the coaches what is important, because I think they don't really, when they're not in the school, they don't understand the workload of the boy, all the other things that is in his life. And so we need to be aware of those things. And I think what's important is for you to be very clear on what your goals are, because you know, if you're gonna let your forward coach do line outs for 20 minutes, because now he wants to get it right, and he's not really how can I say, focusing and making sure that he gets the best out of that 8 or 10 minutes you give him. We need to move on. But I think keeping the boys there, it's just actually causes such a drain on everybody. So I think that's a really good thing for most schoolboy coaches to understand what you're talking about now. Is less time, more productive, and making sure it's short and sharp. Because I know as a player for myself, to try and train for 2 hours, it's a hell of a slog. So yeah, no, that's the timing of a coach is it's so important. But I think sometimes we can't allow the coaches to kind of do their own thing. I think what happens is you've got to put the marker down, like you said you are going to do, and say, let's you draw the line at 75 or at 90 minutes, and then we move away. The problem we have with coaches as well, they're going like, I want to do all my stuff, and then I still want my player to do the extras. If those extras are so important to you, the work-ons, then you build it into your session, because that's ultimately going to make the difference. So that's why I'm saying I think the coaches need to be, they need to decide what is important, and then and build that into their time frame, because otherwise you'll never have time.
And Clinty, we started putting limits on it. So if we do kickoffs, you get 4 done. If you stuff up 3 of them, you stuffed it up, and we move on. And the reality then is that the boys actually came back on their own, in their own time somewhere, and they fixed it. If you put those markers down for them, but our productivity and our quality also went up, because they know I only get 4. And then coincidentally in the last game we stuffed up 3 of the 4 anyway, so it didn't really make a difference. but yeah, like you say, tell the forwards coach, you've got 10 lineouts, bud. Pick 10, because in a game you've only got 10 odd to run with. So why do you want to do 50 in practice if the quality is, if you're not going to do it? So
I think it's such a massive thing for these boys to do their positional skills and their other little things that they don't get time for, because we eat up all the time in the week.
Absolutely.
In the days gone by, in the olden days, the earlier days, our players like Andrew Bear, Cabos, you didn't have to ask them to do work-ons. They knew they had to kind of get there early, do a bit of extra on whatever it is that they were working on. And I think that's that it will really build into your culture as well. In terms of taking that ownership of that time. The boys will put in the time. Some of them you've got to chase away. Especially the boys in the hostels. But yeah, it's a good point.
I've got and everybody else, please feel free to agree or disagree with me, is that I took away no morning sessions. So there is no rugby before school. Our school runs till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then the boys go and they have lunch. And on a Monday to a Thursday, rugby starts at 3 o'clock and rugby stops at 5:15. And within that, in 3 days a week, because Wednesdays we off, we need to fit in 3 gym sessions and all our training. And just because of the luxury that we had so much time, people were like, so we shorten gym sessions. We get everything done within our gym within 30 to 45 minutes some days. It's done, and the boys are out there. And the boys know that between gym and getting to the field, they literally have 5 minutes, and they get there. And in the beginning, it was a bit of a schlep to get everything going for the boys to understand the system. But in the end, we literally, in preparation for our last 2 games, we spent 2 hours on the pitch, max, physically doing team stuff. And if you told that to the boys and to the coaches at the beginning of the year, that building up to the 2 biggest games of the year, you're only going to spend 2 hours on the pitch, they would have laughed at you. But we got everything done, and we actually played better rugby than what we did when we practiced 6-7 hours a week. So it's a bit of a, I mean, it's especially if I don't know if you guys saw the contact thing from World Rugby that came out, where you limited, well, I don't know how it's going to impact us, but 15 minutes of contact a week. I know some coaches are going to lose their toys because they're going to go, how are we going to do this? But yet Harlequins last year hardly did any contact in the week. You go speak to the guys up at Leinster in Ireland, they do no contact in the week, and yet you can get it done. So, you know, it's give or take. Right, building a school rugby program. Please understand that there's no right and wrong here. This is my take on what I think where we can go, and what do you need to do. So first of all, you've got to understand yourself, and it links very nicely to what we said, is that we need to understand, why do we spend the time and effort on rugby that we do. We need to then understand, what are we going to spend our time on. I do believe the lower down you coach, the more you got to spend time on basic handling, attacking skills, basic defensive one-on-one that Katlego will talk on later, basic breakdown skills, basic set piece, because that's the game. You know, we as schoolboy coaches, sometimes we get, I want to run this and that and so many moves, but how many times in the game do you actually do that? So you need to break down specifically why you're there, what you're going to do, and then how are you going to do it, and basically plan your sessions and plan your season as you plan a class that you teach. That's one. So you got to get this done. Second of all, we've spoken about this, and how do we then incorporate these high performance systems? So you need to understand from your management, what is the vision, mission, the strategic plan, and what is the goals? How do we measure success? If you don't understand that, you're going to struggle. For some schools, measuring success is you got to win. For other schools, that's different, but you need to understand what that is. Then you need to know who coaches what. How are you developing those coaches? How is what they do relevant? And then once again, your coaches need to understand, how do you measure their success? And then the last thing with players is, what is your recruitment policy? Now, this is a very touchy subject, especially where I am in KZN. You know, who do you want at your school, and why do you want them there? What do you, if I talk about depth charts, it's that, you know, what does your teams look like forward? What are you short? What do you need to get? You need a proper talent identification and evaluation of players. And the bigger the school are, that this becomes, you know, very, very important. And then also, what is the impact, or what is the input that players have? You know, do they actually have a say? And I know we say, oh, but they're schoolboys, but sometimes, you know, especially the day and age where we live in, these buggers are smart, and they're sometimes smarter than what we are. So we need to understand what they want as well. And I like a lot of paper, but you must have all these things within the system. You got to have this on a piece of paper somewhere, where people can access it and see it, and you got to share it across all the boards. Everybody needs to be that. There cannot be any hidden agendas and all of that. And you got to make sure all of these are aligned. Make sure it gives them an environment, a high performance environment. And what is the succession plan? So, for instance, if I'm director of rugby at college and I leave, who comes after me, and is he on board of what's happening? So you always need to know. Let's put it this way: you always got to work yourself out of a job. Then you've done your job well. You got to make sure there's somebody that can take your seat and carries on properly. Then in terms of the structure of such a system is that, and this is where we've changed a little bit, and Tash, I'm now linking back to what you said previously. We are in the fortunate situation where we've got, yes, on a good Saturday, probably 32 rugby teams, and we've split the program. So we have a high performance section. So that is literally these are the boys that for them, they're here to play rugby, and then academics are second, even though we want to switch it around for them. These are the guys that want to play professional rugby one day, and we need to create a pathway for them to do that. But these are also my coaches they want to coach, and for them rugby is important, and they want to go into provincial structures and move through the ranks, as a lot of us have done. So I need to create a pathway for them to do that. Then our second layer is, those are the players, or those are the teams where, these Oaks, the will is there and everything is there and they're ready to rock and roll, but they're not really there yet. And that's probably the part where I've got more the coaches that are rugby is important really for them, but they have no ambition to coach at a higher level. Their why is more in terms of what can I do for these boys, and they are deployed there and they help with the development. And their job is basically to get the boys from the development stage into the high performance group. Then those coaches have done their job. And then at the bottom, I've got the mass participation. So Texie, those are the Oaks that, they're the boys that they just want to run out on a Saturday, have a blast, play a bit of rugby. Those are the boys that, yes, I must do a winter sport, so I'm going to play some rugby. They're the E's and the F's. And they're just there to have a blast. And those are also the coaches then just, I must coach rugby, I must do something in winter, so this is what I do. And ultimately the pressure on those coaches and those players are minimal. And I call it mass participation. They're there to have fun, they're there to have a blast. And there's ultimately no expectation whatsoever from anybody there. And lo and behold, those Oaks actually have so much fun that they actually end up wanting to move into the bigger things. So we've split that program like that, and it's going to get implemented, and it's actually, I do believe, going to make a massive difference where we're going to go. And then you'll see there, you need a master in charge, somebody to help with the admin. And then obviously running the show. Then something new that I'm going to try from next year on is that I found that depending on the size of your organization, it's very difficult for me, for instance, at the top to take charge of every single thing. So I'm going to have what we call drivers from next year, and this will be a group of coaches. There will be one coach in charge, but there will be certain players within that group and certain coaches within that group that needs to drive aspects of the game. So I, for instance, will have a coach at school, and I'll say, listen here, Shawnee, you're in charge of kicking for the school, and you do feedback on a Monday from whatever you saw on Saturday from kicking across the board from all the teams. You run kicking sessions. Kicking is your baby. And the same then with attack, defense, line-out, scrums, and breakdown. And these will generally be coaches within my high-performance age groups, coaches that want to move forward. But it also gives a little bit of responsibility to those coaches, and they feel they've got a bigger impact. It also helps a little bit of standardization across the board, across our program, and it's something new that we're going to try and see where we can go. Does this make sense to everybody?
Yeah, this is a proper layout, Hein. I think it gives us a good idea. It probably brings in that succession plan you have there. If we have these guys in the B and the C team, and you lose your A guy, you know exactly who's going to be next in there. And yeah, if they align with those drivers, they should be a very easy transition. So this is a proper system that I think we can all use, especially, which I guess would be very effective in a big organization like some of these schools that we have here.
I just found I lost track of, with 45 coaches and 32 rugby teams. I lost track of what's happening across the road because we have fields across the road. I literally lose track of where everybody is and what you need to do, and just helps to create that extra layer. So rather than me having a meeting with 45 coaches on a Monday, I just sit with the drivers and the head coaches. and they disperse. So it just builds a bit better pyramid, and it gives a bit of clarity. So if a boy wants extra kicking sessions, or he wants to know what's happening in the kicking game, he knows exactly where he needs to go, and he can go from there. The most important thing here.
Yeah, can I ask, James? We have a couple of other directors of rugby. Yeah, I know Clenny, Kat, Ty. Do you guys do something similar, or is this something that you're gonna try? Does this make sense to you as well? Your bigger schools that also have a lot of teams.
Yeah, Tixie, if I can quickly jump in there. Yeah, thanks, Hein. Yeah, this is exactly the sort of model that we try and have in our school system. And for me, the biggest thing that alleviates a little bit of pressure, like I mentioned there, that master in charge really does come in handy in terms of the admin, just in terms of organization and all of that, and then obviously I just focus on what's happening on the ground, what's happening with the players, what's happening with the coaches. So if you're someone that's doing both, I'd love to know how you're getting it right, because it's a massive job to try and get both done. The one thing that I can definitely learn from Hein is definitely trying to, disperse more responsibilities in terms of, Heine's got drivers there, give a couple of coaches just responsibilities. Maybe next year someone else must do the defense for all the teams and give feedback. Someone else must do breakdown or attack. Instead of trying to have full control of everything. That's definitely a work on, from my side, and definitely from our program side, just in terms of trying to share those responsibilities. And I think that will also help develop the coaches as well, in a sense, and probably build towards that sort of succession planning. So yeah, thanks for the reminder, Hein.
Can I ask a question, guys? How does your guys' communication in a system like this? How does your communication work? Is it WhatsApp? What are you guys using to communicate? Because I find that a massive challenge currently.
So for me, I think it's a challenge to communicate via emails.
Yeah.
For me, because I just think that the guys don't read their emails, and it's just a mess. It's easiest for me to chat over WhatsApp or put it on a group, and the guys can obviously react to those messages on there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I think one thing that I introduced this year was I sort of started a weekly coaches newsletter that I sort of put onto our WhatsApp group. Obviously, in season, it was quite easy, sit on a Sunday, you review the week. I sort of structured it with an introduction, things that we did well, things that we didn't do so well, and then areas we can improve. I did that sort of weekly. That was an area that I sort of started. I just found that with that, it's in black and white. It's on the coaches group on WhatsApp. It's emailed as well. We've started a Google sort of folder where all our information goes up at this as well. So all our lingo is up on that Google folder, and coaches have access to that at any time. That's obviously still very, very much in its beginning phases, but with our structure where I am, things are obviously still very, very new.
Yeah.
So those small little details that we implemented really helped quite a lot. And then obviously communication on WhatsApp groups is probably the biggest way. But I just find to have that other platform where guys can go back and check, maybe read one or two things, it helps a lot. And also it just helps with accountability. So if a coach isn't doing something that has been mentioned, we can always go back and say, listen, did you read the letter? Yes or no? Okay, well, why didn't you read the letter? Because we've spoken about, the importance of us being on the same page, etc. So that's sort of what we do from our side. Just in terms of your setup and your structure, I think it's fantastic. And this is sort of the plan that I think everyone would love to get in place. So, yeah, I think it just would alleviate a lot of pressure. Yeah. But from my perspective, it does take, you have to have quality coaches in your program to do that. I know Tex mentioned earlier, he's got 3 guys who are sort of keen and driving, and if you've got 3 guys that are and the rest aren't, it's tough to have a setup like this. So obviously your program's got to have those guys, and I suppose it is the role of the director of rugby to get guys on that level in terms of education also. But that's just my sort of input there.
No, absolutely. I mean, those drivers are like in an ideal world. The smaller your program, the more these roles would be condensed or combined. And I mean, we're lucky. I think in a 32 team structure this year, I had 3 outside coaches, which is phenomenal because the rest are all teachers at the school, which makes life easy. And there are challenges. The big thing I want to put out there is that the roles and responsibilities need to be clear for every single person here. If Oaks are not clear on what they need to do, that empowerment becomes a struggle, and it becomes, as much as it needs to be a help for everybody, it does become a bit of a headache if people are not 100% clear of what's expected of them and what they need to do.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, Hein, just from our side at Bosch, we've got also 19, 20 teams.
Yeah.
But the big problem for us is that we've only got like 3 teacher coaches, which is a massive problem. But so what I've tried to do over the last couple of years is trying to align the spine. So you're under 14, 15, 16, 19, you've got teachers that are coaches there. So that just keeps the power within the school and gives you a lot more control, so you can meet with those age group coaches. And then I've also find the same with you, getting those guys that do the drivers that go out there. So I've got Mark Lindenberg, who's an ex-first team coach, Joel Carew. So what they do is on Mondays, Wednesdays, they get a lot of time and they will go and do some set piece with under 14s, breakdown. So it just helps with that alignment. And so that's where we are with that. I would say in the structure for us, we obviously have an A and B sides. They spend a lot of time together, and I kind of call them my high performance groups because they will kind of, a lot of energy goes in there. And then the C and Ds, that's the mass participation. But I also, over the years, I've realized, I don't know how many coaches you've got down over those teams, but the same amount of energy and effort and love goes into those guys as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I've had dads that are upset when they don't play the same amount of matches, they don't have the same amount of balls in the bag, or the coach is not as good as the A-side coach. So we kind of love them all, and I find when they get to under 19, we do have a good group of guys because of the 2 age groups coming together. The one thing that's a little bit different by us as well, myself and the master in charge, Rob de Rimple, I would say we're very much on the same line.
Yeah.
Nothing really happens without me going through him, because he's got the inner workings of the school and where the finances are and what can we do or not. So it's a very tight. We work well together, and I think that's the really important part of it. But the big problem is, we only have 3 coaches that are teachers. So we have a lot of the teachers are managers.
Yeah.
So they're in the age group, and I do think that's very important because they understand the boys. They see the boys. They understand what the school is about.
Yeah. So something that I didn't even put on here is that we've got the sports office. So, let's say we play DHS on the weekend. Of the 30 odd rugby teams, maybe DHS only gives us A, B, and C. So the sports office then goes out and finds us games for, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, D, E, and F. And those games are generally played whoever wants to play us. And that is a massive challenge we have with the size of the program that we have, is to find games for all our teams every single weekend. But what you say, Clint, in terms of love and care and balls and fields and practice facilities, everybody gets exactly the same. I think the big thing for me is the pressure on the mass participation Oaks is a lot less than on the high performance Oaks, in terms of what I expect of those coaches. If his planning is not on the OneDrive or something, I'm not going to bite his head off. He's the oak that misses an email every now and again. Where the high performance oaks are, I expect them to be fully on top of everything that happens.
Yeah, just on the communication with the guys.
Yeah.
So when the teacher guys like Yakuzeman at under 16 and Derek at under 14 and Joel and those guys, we've got the staff room, and like you say, you have amazing meetings in that kind of space. So I tend to try and get to Monday before they start training, just meet with like the 4 coaches in that high performance group and just kind of chat to them about the weekend's game and what we kind of want to build in. And then, like I said, by us being there, I coach defense, attack there. I come and do red pod with them. So I spend a lot of time with those guys. And so that really aligns us. But I do find it so much better when you do have those extra specialists that just on a weekly, that they've got some ownership in it. So that's a fantastic way of doing it.
We're going to just to the size of the organization. We're going to try MS Teams next year, and from Teams you can make channels. So load the players on there and get the communication out to parents, and get all the resources. Everything is a one-stop shop for everybody. We're going to try it and see where we go. Okay, I need to.
Sorry, just before you jump over, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I'd love to hear from somebody like Offense, who's at like a proper private school. And I know, Offense, you've got some class IP there with Flash and the boys coaching there. I'd love to know what your setup looks like. Do you let the guys be drivers, or does everything still come from you as a sports guy?
Yeah, no, I've had to very quickly learn to let go of a lot of things. It was, I don't think COVID helped, but in terms of our structure, it is very similar to what Hein has put forward here. I mean, as you've mentioned, I've fortunate enough to have the likes of a Flash and a Lizo at the school. So what I've actually done is made Lizo sort of the director of the juniors, if you want to call it that. And he was taken care of from the under 14 and 15 group and doing a lot of work there with them. And I was then concentrating on working with them as coaches rather than the players per se. In our pre-season, I would do a lot of that because obviously them being full-time teachers, their program is not as flexible. So I would then spend a lot of time myself in the conditioner on the HP aspect of it in terms of how we want to play and breakdowns, attack, defense, just to sort of put the outlines out. But especially in season, Flash would take care of all the attack from under 14 up. I would do all the defense from under 14 up, and Lizo would also then be in charge of all the forward stuff. So all the scrumming and the lineouts and whatnot, he was sort of heading up all the coaches regarding that. So it is a lot easier to have a meeting with 3 individuals than to try and get all the coaches in together. And also just in terms of alignment, having worked with Flash before, it was a lot easier to get to a point where we all agree on how we want to play and what it is that we want to achieve, and then let them sort of run with it. And then we obviously just tweak things here and there. So yeah, I'm 100% behind this structure. I think it's possibly the easiest way to try and do that. It's not easy though, but yeah, it's the most practical, I think, to try and. Yeah,
we started something similar as well. Unfortunately, COVID had its impact. But I've also noticed that, like I said, we've got 3 guys that are really interested and they're keen to have responsibility. So I've actually also done a junior head this year. We had a skills coach that worked with me at club level, and I brought him in and he took charge of the juniors. And then I had my head coaches work with me to put that whole program in place. So I'll give them principles of attack, principles of defense, principle of breakdown, and whatever, and they go and drive it with their groups, and then they'll come with feedback, and then I'll assist. Yeah, because you want to stimulate those guys that have initiatives to achieve and want a little bit more responsibility as well. So that's a good system.
The junior rugby, somebody heading that up is absolutely something I'm going to steal from this meeting now. It's definitely something I'm going to use. Thank you. I've got 4 minutes to quickly finish up. So in terms of the
rush, Hein, take your time.
In terms of the components, you need to be very clear and ask the questions. What are we going to analyze? How are we going to analyze it? What does our strength and conditioning program look like? What is the equipment that I have? Needs to supplement that, obviously. What is your medical protocol? I've learned the hard way that you actually got to have that on a piece of paper somewhere. And you've got to have some sort of mental program, even if it's through the psychologist at your school or something that you know. You also got to be honest and ask, what do we change? What are we going to change? What do we actually need to keep the same? What do we need to improve? I did a very interesting exercise with our boys, stop, start, continue, the traffic light type of thing. And the things that came out of there was immense. And I did the same thing with the coaches. And it's amazing how aligned the two were in terms of what, as college rugby, we need to stop doing, what do we need to continue doing, and what do we need to start doing to be successful in future. And we're going to implement those now. I also believe you need to do something that's different than the rest. You can't just copy and paste what other people are doing. And you'll see tomorrow, hopefully I touch a little bit in the attack session on that as well. And just don't be scared to do things different. And how do I use what I have and be creative with it? And then the last part is that the team aspects. Now, here's where it gets interesting, and this is where documents become really, really important. And I want to start in the middle through what is the blueprint of your school. You all of you mentioned, in a way, you want to play the same. I've got a different approach. I want to give coaches and say, within what are the things we can do the same? And if I got to touch quickly, it's like we can all do the breakdown the same. We can all have the same individual tackle technique. We can all scrum the same, and we can all have the same lifting in a line-out. Scrum offs can kick or kickers can kick the same, and we can all catch and pass the same and attack space the same. But in terms of how we want to play, in terms of structure, it depends on the individuals that we have. And that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned over the last 10 years of coaching, is that if I coach at international level, at professional level, I buy or I select a team that suits the way I want to play rugby. If I'm at schoolboy rugby level, I've got to use the 15 individuals that I have. And sometimes the way I want to play or the way I want to do things need to change just because of the individuals that I have within my team. So I've now given coaches, there's certain boxes that you need to tick as a coach, that we must all do the same. But in terms of the player personnel that you have, you got to use your identity as a team and play. And we have an identity as college. You know, we're hard and we hurt people when we play against them. But some teams play really flashy because they have 15 players that can throw it around. And the first team, for instance, doesn't have the personnel and they play different. So that's the one thing that you got to have very clear. The next thing is players need to know what is their positional requirements. You need to have on a piece of paper, if a player walks into your office, goes and says, Meneer, what do I need to do as a scrum off to make the team? You've got to give him a piece of paper in the hand and say, this is what you need to do, or explain it to him. It must be visual for him to see. You also got to have a long-term player development. So how do I measure a guy that comes in at under 14? What are the boxes that he needs to tick by when the time he leaves at the end of matric? How did we as a school guided him to become a better rugby player? And you've got to have measurables for those. If you don't, strongly recommend you do get those. And then the physical side is the strength and conditioning and nutrition. And I have found the biggest problem with schoolboy rugby players is the nutrition. It's what they put inside their bodies is horrible. Geez, I'm amazed that I've forgotten how kids eat and how they're wrong they eat. And it's got a massive influence on how they perform on a Saturday. And that's a big challenge that we need to change. And our strength and conditioning, for instance, where I'm now, the standard test of Broncos and that has gone out the window. We're doing things totally off the charts, totally different, and it's we've definitely reaped benefits from it. It's all functional now, so, not CrossFit, but it's a lot of interesting stuff. Our strength and conditioning side has come up with.
Hein, Offense has a question.
Fancy gooi.
Yeah, Hein, you mentioned, I think about 2 slides back, that you must have a mentor program in place as well. And sure, especially in terms of schools program, I think that's something that's been lacking, for many years now. And it's you say mentor program now, and I'm just thinking, before I did the 3D program, for instance, there's a lot of things that I think coaches will be doing that they wouldn't know would sort of form part of a mentor program. And there are a lot of things as well that, they have not been doing that, if they ever found out, how much of a big part it plays in terms of the development of an athlete, that they would have done from the beginning. And after doing the 3D course, when I got to Heron Bridge, they do a subject called SEL. It's called Social and Emotional Learning. And how the two programs are so similar in their principles. And I just finished the 3D coaching, so I asked the principal if I can join the SEL department as well. And what I now have is an opportunity to reach the players off the field, even in the classroom, on the very same principles that I would have wanted to drive through 3D coaching on the field as well. And I mean, they do it from grade 8 to grade 10, possibly grade 11 this coming year. And that's going to be a big plus for me and a big bonus. So if any of you are able to get that program in your school, it's called Social and Emotional Learning. It's an American-based program. I really would recommend it because it's really made my job so much easier now, to a point where I'd like to expose a lot of the coaches now, even if they haven't done 3D, at least to the SEL program. Especially if the coaches who will be coaching the players are part of delivering that program, then you're going a long way in terms of everything that we've been speaking about now. So yeah, just wanted to share that.
That's phenomenal, and there's definitely something I will go have a look at. And if you think about it, if I take where we are, I mean, we've got 13-year-old, 14-year-old boys coming to us in grade 8. And they're from Uppington, and I mean, we've got a boy from Brackenfell, and they're from the Eastern Cape, and they arrive here alone, and their support network is 1,000 k's away. And imagine 13-year-old, and you're in this place, and a lot of them are Afrikaans, and I mean, this is proper English country I'm in now, and some of them only speak English in self-defense. You got to, and you expect that kid to play rugby on a Saturday, and you're on his case. If he doesn't win a rugby game or if he makes a mistake, life is a bit bigger than that, and what is the emotional support we give those players, being alone and only going home twice a year? It does become a bit of you got to have a support network for those players in place. And I do think, Fancy, as you said, it should be probably a top-down approach. Let's first educate the educators and the coaches on what is the right things to say and to do, and then get that program down into the players. So it's definitely something we need to look at.
Hein, Ivan, do you have a question? You can unmute and ask.
So what I was hinting at earlier, but also from what a friend is saying here now, is we're not just coaching rugby players, we're coaching, as you said, holistic young men. The reasons for me, resilience that he learns on a rugby field, he can take into a maths classroom. A kid is generally speaking lazy in one environment, or generally speaking be lazy in multiple environments, generally speaking. And so we can't forget that we actually have a network of skill sets. So like you said, that this course, which also I'll be looking up, to have that in the sort of pseudo academic classroom, and then to be able to draw on it in your sports board. I know at my previous school at one stage we actually had our drama teacher coming down and doing some of those what ostensibly are touchy-feely skills, but actually, she had a grip on communication within a group that she was able to bring from her drama world into the sub-team dynamics within a rugby group. So for me, again, yes, we are talking about rugby, but we are talking about boys for whom rugby is a component of their world, and there are other things that may have leakages into that space.
Absolutely, absolutely. I had a young Hendrik Opperman at Porus. He was the head of drama. I brought him down to do a team building session with the first team in 2015. The boys thought I was nuts, but it was an amazing experience, and we got to tap into those as well. Just then to finish off, gents, the last part of your program that you need to look at is those individual aspects. You need to find out what is the identity of your players. You must look at the academics. Ultimately, that's why they're at school. You've got to put something in place with discipline and academics. So we've got a no pass, no play policy, for instance. And then I am of the opinion that every single player in our program needs to do one cultural activity and one other sport. They cannot do just rugby. It's not healthy. It's not good for their development. You got to do it, and that's where schools coaches especially need to talk to each other, especially in the bigger schools. My guys play water polo, they play cricket, they do athletics, they sing in the choir, they do production. We had an Afrikaans production, or half the first team was in that. And they also know that the academics and discipline records need to be up to space. But you've got to have the balls that if a guy fails or has a discipline issue, you've got to have the balls not to play him on Saturday, even if he's the best guy on the team. Which brings me back to how's the alignment. Everybody must be on the same page in terms of that, and not wanting to fire you on a Monday because you lost a game or didn't play a guy because he bunked or something like that. And then the other two are we've spoken a lot about the mental approach. And we need to look at the individual as the kid. Within the bigger picture, how do we look after this kid and every single player and every single coach within our program? Then I'm not going to talk about the slide again, but this is the foundation. If there's one thing you take away from today, build whatever you do on these principles. If you can build it on these 4 principles, you are halfway there. And then my last message to you, you need to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. How you do that and how you put that in place is up to you. But we need to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. If you've mastered this, I've only got a grasp of this over the last 2 years when we were in the Netherlands. If you learn to grasp this, you will be massively successful. And if you see where Netherlands rugby is going now, and especially in the Super Cup that they're playing, you'll understand. And everything we did there was built around this. So you'll be successful. Any questions? Sorry, Texie, I'm 14 minutes late.
No, it's all good. Give it a minute or so to see if there's any questions. But while the guys are thinking up.
No questions, Hein, just a comment.
Listening.
So often all of us operate in our different environments, and it's usually feels like a silo, operating in the silo environment. But once you start talking, and I hear Clinton and Lynch, everybody is sort of sharing, Tyron, and the similarities in our situations and in our environments are actually. It's almost it's almost scary. It's so funny that you think, yes, how am I going to do this, and how am I going to operate in the space? And I have all these challenges, but everyone on the group, I think, shares the very similar challenges. And even though we're trying to find solutions in our own different silos, majority of the time the principles of the solutions are so often the same in how we can operate to get some sort of success, whether you are in a school with 32 teams or a school with 6 teams. If the basic sort of functional principles are in play, then you can gain very similar success.
Absolutely. Clinton.
Yes, and also just want to add, I don't think as coaches we realize how much power we have sometimes to influence young men, change their journeys, give them hope, just give them memories that they so will value. Often I think every decision we make carries quite a lot of weight, and we must never forget that. I mean, I was just taking my dog for a walk here in Port Alfred the day before yesterday. I saw a young chap, a black chap, and he was there with a rugby ball. And so I'm on holiday, so I'm not scouting or recruiting, but he did look like a very good athlete. And so I started to have conversation with him, and he's from a small school that doesn't have rugby or cricket or anything like that. And his eyes just brightened up by you showing interest and having a conversation about, you know, about sport and how sport can change his life. And, you know, so, yeah, I just think, like you said, it's such an important part that we need to realize the influence we can have. And that all stems into that culture and that care, you know. It's not just about winning those rugby matches. That will take care of itself. That's out of your control most of the time. But just interacting with young men on a daily basis, on a positive mentorship level, is quite incredible. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Awesome, Clinton. Thank you very much. Anybody else? All right, guys. So
sorry. I'm doing a catch and pass session with the guy a little bit later, just to see if he's got good hands. I'm just joking.
Guys, from my side, then, if there's no other questions, Coach Hein, I want to thank you a lot for this session. And if everybody can see the slide, Hein is somebody who has a hell of a lot of experience over many years at big schools, small schools, provincial, Europe, national, building programs at growing countries that are taking up rugby in Europe. He mentioned Israel at Netherlands. Hein has created the finalpass.com, and he's available to assist your schools in detail with how to put all of these implement all of these things that he's spoken about today, give you step-by-step instructions to do that. And I'm going to put this slide on our group as well. But from our side, Hein, thanks a lot for a great session. I think it's a great way to kick off how this weekend is going to go. Thank you so much for the interaction. I think what the fence has said is crucial there. This is a learning experience, but it's also building a network so that we can realize we are doing very similar things and we can really learn a lot from each other in simple ways and in very complex ways to make ourselves better coaches, create better humans, and all those things. So, Coach Hein, thank you so much for a great session. Really appreciate it.
Texie, can I add there, guys? On that site, there's a blog where I've put a few articles, 6 articles on literally on what does the professional environment expect of players, and there's some quite interesting things there. You know, so there's some quite interesting articles, and then it's also open for you guys that if you have something pressing that you want to get out there. You know, if you're willing to put it into an article, I'll make it pretty, I'll post it under your name. It's a blog that I want to get going. It's something new that I want to start. And the mindset is I want to challenge the way we do things. I want to challenge the way we do things, so we not just keep on doing the same things over and over again. That's the whole idea behind the final pass.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach Hein.